Alrighty guys, welcome back to another video, and in this lesson I want to talk to you guys about something called direct opposition. Now remember in the last video what we did is we took a look at a king and a pawn endgame, and we saw that if we can get a king to the 6th rank and we can get a pawn behind it, then essentially what we can do is we can promote that pawn, queen, and checkmate, win the game. So now we have the question of, okay, if that's a winning position, how do we actually get to that position? Well, the answer, you probably could have guessed it, is something called opposition. So first of all, what is opposition? Before I go any further, I just want to say that in chess there are a bunch of different types of opposition. In this video, we're just going to cover something called direct opposition. Don't worry about the other types for now. We're going to cover those in the future. So direct opposition, and I'm just going to refer to it as opposition in this video, is essentially when we have two kings and they are facing each other either on the same rank or the same file with one square between them. So this is a situation where one of these sides would have opposition, and the way that you tell which side actually has it is the side whose turn it's not to move. So if it's your turn to move, then you don't have the opposition. It's kind of counterintuitive, and it's kind of weird because if you have the opposition, it's actually an advantage. All right, but I just said that if it's the other person's turn to move, then you have the advantage. That doesn't really make sense because most of the time in chess, being able to move first is an advantage. So why would this situation be so weird and different? Well, we're going to go ahead and take a look at an example right now, and I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. I know right now all of this sounds really confusing, but after this little mini example, it's going to become really clear. So the idea behind opposition is kind of similar to what we talked about in the last tutorial, where we were trying to take our pawn and promote them to a queen. Now, in order to do this, we essentially needed to force the black king to make a bad decision. We needed to force them move to a square that they didn't really want to move to. So in this little mini game, these examples demonstrating opposition, I'm just going to say, okay, the point of this game is to essentially play as white and move them to the 8th rank. That's it. We have two kings, so it's going to be really simple. So in this example, white is going to move first. All right. So I'm going to be playing both sides. Let's see. Let's try to go in kind of this direction right here. So white moves first. I'm going to go ahead and move over here. And now black is just going to block me. Okay, that didn't really work. So let me go over here. Maybe if I get all the way to the edge. Nope. All right. So yeah, no matter which way I go, this isn't really working out for me. I mean, I can't go this way and this way, or of course this way, or else I'm just going to get captured. So whenever you are white and it is your turn to move first, in this little mini game, there is no possible way that you can get to the 8th rank. So now, with that being said, you guys can probably see where this is going. Let's go ahead and play this game again, but instead of white starting first, now it's a black's turn to move. Now, of course, no piece can go right here or else it's going to be captured. So black has two options. He can either go here, here, well, I guess more than two. It has 5 options, but really 2 good options. Can go here or here. Again, if we just go back, then white's just going to move forward and not really making any progress for black. So black is going to go in one of these directions. It doesn't really matter. Let's just say over here. So now that white had the opposition, in other words, it was black's turn to move first, what white can do is it can actually move one step further towards the 8th rank by going to e6. And now look at what happened. So this square right here, d7 and d6, are now controlled by both the white king and the black king. So of course the black king can't go there. So if it wants to try to defend in any kind of way, it needs to move up to d8. But now again, white can just move to f7. And of course, since this square and this square are blocked off, e7 and the e8, black is really out of luck right now. Maybe they can move down, but boom, roasted. There we go. All right, so opposition seems kind of interesting, I guess, but I mean, the fact of the matter is that we don't play these mini games in chess. I mean, if we ever got to this position, two kings, it doesn't matter if you get to the 8th rank or not, you can't win without any other pieces on the board. So, how is this concept actually useful in real life, in a real chess game? So the answer to that question is actually a pretty important one, and that is whenever we have a king and a pawn, and we want to take this pawn and march them down so that they can promote to a queen. Now, we actually don't even have to calculate how it's going to go all the way to the last rank, the 8th rank, because we know that if we get to a position where the king is on the 6th and the pawn is on the 5th, then we're essentially guaranteed to win. And we also know that once we get to that position and we promote to a queen, we know how to checkmate with a queen and a king. So if we can just get to this one position, then we essentially won the game. How awesome is that? So before I start going through and showing you guys this technique, I want to point out two important rules that you guys are never allowed to break whenever advancing your pawn to the 8th rank. And that is, first of all, it is your king's job in this situation to make a path for the pawn. So this king, even though you can't see it, it essentially has a force field around it. So this is the area where this enemy king can never enter, or else it'll be captured. It's just not allowed in the law of chess. So essentially what we want to do is move our king ahead of our pawn and then just start plowing through. And then once we open up the floodgates, our pawn can essentially follow until it gets to the 5th, and then we can use the technique that we learned in the last video. Now, another key concept is that we need to have the opposition. In other words, we need to be in an area where we are on the same rank or file as the enemy king, one square apart, and it's the enemy's turn to move. Because remember, whenever you have the opposition, it's the enemy that has the disadvantage. If they move first, they actually have a disadvantage. So let's go ahead and, so right now I'm actually playing against myself. I want to play against the computer just to demonstrate that this technique does work. So finish versus computer. All right, playing against a level 10 chess engine. So the first thing I'm going to do is accomplish both those rules by moving my king to d3. So by doing this, I'm going to A, get ahead of my pawn, in front of my pawn, whatever you want to call it, and B, I'm going to gain the opposition. So boom, there I go. So now whenever I move my king here, of course I started controlling these squares, c4, d4, and e4. Now the king, of course, it doesn't want to move back because that's just going to allow us to progress even further. And before, when this king was right here, it was actually controlling these 3 squares. But now that we forced it to move either left or right, again, in chess, you're not allowed to just say pass, I just want to skip my turn, my king is where it needs to be. You have to make a move. And that's the key concept behind this. The 2 options we gave them were both crappy options. They're essentially both clearing away for us. So now, what we want to do is we just want to go ahead and take our king and move it right here. And in doing so, what's going to happen is this is going to place our king on a square where we can not only protect this file, but we can also allow our pawn to move up one step and get one step closer to the promised land. So let me go ahead and do that, and we'll see what the engine does. All right, so the engine did a pretty good move. Again, these are all losing moves, but we're forcing all of this. It says, all right, I see what you're trying to do. Move your pawn up and queen. I don't want to allow that. I'm going to get in the best possible position, which is essentially blocking you. So now a lot of people in this situation are going to move their pawn up. But again, remember the 2 rules. We want to A, be in front of our pawn, and B, always maintain the opposition. So in that case, we actually aren't even going to touch our pawn at all. We're just going to take the king and move it over here. Now, still, the king can't go to this area, or this area. If it tries to go around here, then it's just going to take way too long, and we can just move our king and put a buffer around it. So the king goes we're basically, like I said, forcing it to continue to make bad decisions. So again, what I'm going to do is take my king, move it up here, and follow the same progression. All right, the king is backing up. Now again, I know it's tempting, but do not move your pawn up. And I'm going to show you why. If you move your pawn up, and let's say the black king moves over here, and then for the next move, let's just say I move right here, the black king moves back. Look what happened. The black king has gained the opposition. We are now one square apart, and they were the last one to move, so it's my move, so I can't get past them. So again, the last move that the black king did was c6 to d7. I'm just going to follow my rule. I'm just going to say, okay, stay in front of the pawn, maintain the opposition, and I am now one square away from getting the king on the 6th rank. So let me go ahead and move the king there. And from here, it's easy peasy. Just move your pawn up, and look at that. Look what position we ended up with. The king on the 6th and the pawn on the 5th. Pretty beautiful. Now, if you guys are saying, okay, it can't always be that easy. I mean, yeah, level 10, but not everyone makes moves like that. Let me go ahead and go way back to the beginning, and I want to show you another line that you may come across. Alright, so back in the board editor, and in the last game, let's just go ahead and recap the first couple moves. I took my king, and I moved it from e2 to d3, and then the black king chose to move to e5. Now, of course, I continued with c4, and what the black king was doing was essentially just backing up the entire time. So it made it really easy for this lesson, but you may be like, okay, it can't always be that easy. And even at this point, after I move from d3 to c4, the king doesn't have to back up. I mean, it also has this option right here of moving from e5 to e4. So what would happen if we were in this situation? Well, no need in talking in hypotheticals. I just go ahead and click done. And I'm gonna play against the computer, level 10. All right, again, so this is gonna resemble, instead of black choosing to move to d6, they chose to move to e4 instead. What I can do now is just go ahead and progress my pawn, start marching him up the board. So boom, look at that. Now, what does the chess engine do? It moves forward or moves up from e4 to e5. All right, in that case, I'm just gonna go ahead, follow my rule. Maintain opposition, stay ahead of my pawn, and therefore, I'm gonna go c4 to c5. Beautiful. And he keeps going up and up. And this is essentially the pattern that we're gonna follow. Whenever the king chooses to essentially match you on the same rank, what you can do is you can have the king step by step and essentially escort your pawn up until it gets to the 8th rank. So just to play this out and show you guys that it does indeed work, let's go ahead, take this pawn, move him up, and there we go. So now we're in a position where the black king moved over to d7, and what we want to do now, it would be a deadly mistake to actually move our pawn up prematurely. What we're going to do is follow the same rule. Again, this is probably getting annoying by now, but that's good because you guys will never forget it. Move my pawn, move my king over. I now have the opposition and am in front of the pawn. So at this point in time, we are one step away, well actually 2 steps away from the Holy Land of getting our king on the 6th and our pawn on the 5th. Now from here, smooth sailing. If you guys forgot exactly what to do in this situation, watch the last video and you guys are going to see how to promote your pawn. And if you guys forgot how to checkmate with a king and a queen, watch a couple videos before and I will demonstrate that. Now, the last thing I want to mention really quickly is that if you're ever in this situation and you move your king here and this enemy king does not go left or right or to any of these diagonals, but instead they just go up right here, all you have to do is follow the same rules by moving your king up. And again, if they just move it up, then they're going to make it really easy for us. Boom, roasted. So again, that is the basics of direct opposition. Like I said, in chess there are many different forms of opposition. They can get a little bit more complex, but we'll talk about those in the future videos. So for now, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I will see you guys next time.